Carl Whitfield had checked 11,000 rail seals in his career. He almost didn't check this one. The crimp looked right from 3 feet away. Same brand, same dull gray metal, same factory shape. It was the serial number that stopped him. 9 digits, and the third one didn't match the manifest. Not smudged, not scratched. Wrong, the way it looks when someone cuts the original wire, does the job, and crimps a replacement seal carrying a number that belongs to a different boxcar 4 states away. Whitfield had no idea that number would eventually help unravel a boxcar and bulkhead network moving $650 million in fentanyl a year, tied to 58 federal indictments, run out of the same 12 rail cars cycling through the same 3 transfer yards for almost 2 years without a single flag. He didn't know any of that on March 3, 2025. He just knew a number was wrong on a car full of what the paperwork called industrial ceramic tile, headed from Nuevo Laredo to a distributor outside Kansas City. He wrote it up anyway. 15 minutes, maybe less. The kind of report that usually goes into a file cabinet and never comes out again. This one didn't stay in the cabinet. By the time federal agents finished pulling the thread Whitfield had noticed, they'd found a false bulkhead built to beat X-ray density scanners, a yard clerk on a cartel payroll, a fabrication shop in Monterrey building smuggling compartments to factory tolerances, and the largest single-rail seizure of fentanyl in the history of the case files that would eventually be opened on it. What the video does not do is spoil how a rail worker's 15-minute report turned into the biggest interstate freight case the FBI's San Antonio field office had run in a decade. That part unfolds the way it actually did, one mismatched detail at a time. Union Pacific's Laredo yard sits on the Texas side of the Rio Grande, across from Nuevo Laredo, one of the busiest rail border crossings in North America. Roughly 6,000 freight cars cross there every day. Grain, auto parts, steel coil, consumer goods, and, somewhere inside that river of container traffic, whatever doesn't want to be found. A single boxcar disappearing into that volume is not hard. It is, in fact, the entire design principle. Cartels do not hide fentanyl in something that looks suspicious. They hide it in something that looks like a Tuesday. The car in question, stenciled UPRR 411268, carried a bill of lading describing 42 pallets of glazed porcelain tile, gross weight 18,400 pounds, consigned to a company called Meridian Tile and Stone Distributors on the outskirts of Kansas City, Missouri. Meridian had a real warehouse, real employees on paper, a real loading dock. It had been registered with the state of Missouri in January 2022, and it had never once been the subject of a customs hold, a DEA flag, or so much as a parking complaint. That was the point. A shell company only works if it looks bored. Special Agent Elena Vasquez picked up Whitfield's report 2 days later, on March 5th, sitting in the FBI's San Antonio field office, with a stack of similar rail anomaly reports that mostly went nowhere. Mismatched seals happen. Sometimes a yard worker replaces a damaged seal and logs it wrong. Sometimes a computer glitch reassigns a serial number. Vasquez had closed 40 of these in the past year with a one-line memo. Administrative error, no further action. She almost closed this one the same way. Then she pulled the car's full routing history, and the routing history is what changed everything. UPRR 411268 had crossed the border 11 times in the previous 22 months. Same manifest description each time: ceramic tile, glazed porcelain, occasionally listed as decorative stone with a slightly different weight. Same consignee. Same 3 transfer yards on the route north. Laredo, then a rail interchange outside San Antonio, then a classification yard in Fort Worth, before the final run to Kansas City. 11 trips, 11 clean inspections. Not one had ever been pulled for secondary screening because on paper this car had done nothing but exist. Vasquez sat with that number for a long time. 11 trips is not a supply run. 11 trips is a schedule. Here is where the case stopped being about one broken seal and became about a system. Vasquez requested manifest data on every boxcar, meridian tile, and stone had ever received. The answer came back the following week. Not one car, but 12, all registered to the same general freight class, all originating somewhere near the Nuevo Laredo crossing, all converging eventually on the same Kansas City address. 12 boxcars, rotating in and out of service, moving through the same 3 yards on staggered schedules, so that no single car ever repeated a pattern often enough to draw attention. It was a shell game played with 40-ton steel containers. I spent hours going through the case file for this one, and one detail kept nagging at me the whole way through. None of the 12 boxcars were owned by Union Pacific or leased under any account tied to a produce or building materials shipper. All 12 were leased through a private railcar leasing firm out of Chicago, paid for 18 months in advance, in cash equivalents routed through 3 different intermediary accounts. Whoever was running this had learned at some point that a well-maintained boxcar with a spotless inspection history is one of the most boring objects in America. Boring is what gets waved through. The false bulkhead itself took agents almost 3 more months to understand, because until they physically cut into one, nobody knew exactly what they were looking at. Standard boxcar inspections at the border rely heavily on backscatter X-ray, which reads density. Tile is dense. Fentanyl-laced powder, pressed into bricks and vacuum-sealed, reads at a density disturbingly close to ceramic stoneware once you account for the packing material around it. The smugglers had done the math. They built a false wall 11 inches behind the front pallet row, framed in the same gauge steel as the boxcar's structural ribs. So a scan of the car's interior showed exactly what 42 pallets of tile should show. Dense, uniform, unremarkable, right up until someone with a torch and a warrant cut through the drywall backing and found the compartment behind it. Whoever engineered that bulkhead understood freight rail inspection protocols at a level that goes well past cartel muscle. That is not something you learn moving product on foot across the Sonoran Desert. That is something you learn from someone with actual fabrication expertise, and finding that person became its own investigation inside the investigation. By late April 2025, Vasquez had a working theory about the bulkhead, a working theory about the 12-car rotation, and nothing at all on how the manifests kept clearing without a single flagged inspection at any of the 3 transfer yards. That gap would close faster than she expected, and when it did, it wouldn't come from a wiretap or a lab report. It would come from a parking lot camera outside a strip mall in Laredo, and from there the case would stop being about freight and start being about people. The camera belonged to a taqueria 2 blocks from the Union Pacific Yard offices. Agents pulled 13 months of footage looking for one thing: a yard employee meeting with anyone connected to the 12 boxcars leasing paperwork. On the 7th day of review, they found him. Ruben Salcido, 41 years old, a dispatch clerk with 11 years at the Laredo interchange yard, meeting a man in a gray Silverado in the same parking spot on the same day of the month, going back at least 14 months. Salcido's job gave him something more valuable than money. He assigned interchange routing codes, the internal instructions that tell a yard crew which track a car sits on and how long it dwells before being classified onward. A boxcar that dwells too long at a yard gets a second look. A boxcar that clears classification fast, on a routing code from someone who knows exactly which track avoids the random selection scanner queue, never gets that second look at all. Salcido had been quietly steering UPRR 411268 and its 11 siblings away from secondary screening for over a year, one routing assignment at a time, small enough that no single decision looked wrong on its own. What's most surprising about this case isn't the bulkhead, and it isn't the 14 months of parking lot meetings. It's that Salcido was making $81,000 a year at Union Pacific, and investigators would later determine his payments from the network totaled closer to $11,000 a month. Less than what a mid-level courier might carry across the border in a backpack in a single run. He wasn't buying a yacht. Financial records recovered later showed most of it went to his daughter's tuition at a private college in San Antonio and a used truck loan. That detail sat wrong with more than one agent on the case, and it still does. This wasn't a man living large. It was a man who found a quiet, invisible way to be corrupted and almost got away with it precisely because it never showed. Salcedo's Silverado contact turned out to be a mid-level logistics coordinator working for a man investigators would spend the next 4 months trying to identify by anything other than a nickname, El Ingeniero, the engineer. Every wiretapped conversation referred to him that way, never a surname, never a physical description beyond, "He doesn't come to the yard." Whoever he was the one who understood boxcar engineering well enough to design a compartment that beat backscatter X-ray, and he was the one, agents began to suspect, holding the entire 12-car operation together. Weather worked against the investigation almost immediately. A March cold front dropped ice across South Texas rail lines for 6 days, grounding half the surveillance flights HSI had planned to run along the Laredo to San Antonio corridor, and pausing physical tails on Salcedo's movements because agents couldn't risk a vehicle sliding on black ice and blowing the operation's cover in a fender bender. 6 days lost. 6 days the network kept moving product while the task force sat frozen, literally 60 miles from the yard they were watching. They picked the thread back up in May, and what they found waiting for them was worse than a delay. Boxcar UPRR 411268 had run its route again during the freeze. Same schedule, same clean paperwork, while the task force's own surveillance had a 6-day hole in it. Whatever moved through Kansas City that week moved completely unwatched, and there was no way, after the fact, to know how much of it. Vasquez has said, in later interviews cleared for release, that this was the point the case stopped feeling theoretical. Here's what this tells us about how these networks actually survive. It isn't through brute force or constant violence. It's through patience and paperwork, through finding the 3 or 4 ordinary humans inside a massive bureaucratic system. A clerk, a leasing agent, a shipping coordinator, who can each make one small, deniable decision that adds up to something enormous. The bulkhead was clever. The clerk was cheap. Together, they were nearly invisible for 2 years. Identifying El Ingeniero took a confidential source the task force had been quietly developing since February, a mid-tier courier who'd worked cash pickup routes for the Sinaloa cartel's Nuevo Laredo cell, and who, facing an unrelated federal charge in a separate case, agreed to cooperate in exchange for consideration at sentencing. The source didn't know El Ingeniero's real name either, but he knew where deliveries of raw fabrication material went. A metal shop in Monterrey, Nuevo León, operating under the name Fabricaciones Industriales Reina, ostensibly building custom truck beds and trailer frames for the regional ranching industry. Mexican federal authorities, coordinating with HSI attachés, put the shop under watch in June 2025. What they found inside, once a warrant let them look, was not a truck bed operation. It was a precision metal fabrication floor building, custom steel bulkhead assemblies to the exact interior dimensions of a 50-foot Union Pacific boxcar, complete with a jig rig for replicating factory rivet patterns, so the finished compartment would pass a visual inspection from someone standing inside the car with a flashlight. The man running the floor was a welder named Hector Duarte, 48, with no cartel record and a legitimate 20-year career in industrial fabrication before, investigators believe, a debt to a local moneylender in 2021 pulled him into doing this kind of work for people who paid in cash and didn't ask for invoices. Duarte was not El Ingeniero. He built what El Ingeniero designed. But his shop's delivery logs, dates, quantities of raw steel, destination codes scrawled in the margins, gave agents something they hadn't had in 4 months of investigation. A real paper trail connecting Monterrey fabrication to the Laredo yard to the Kansas City address in one continuous unbroken chain. Here's the part that doesn't make sense on the surface. If this network had a fabrication shop, a corrupted yard clerk, and a distribution front that had operated clean for 2 years, Why would anyone eventually make a mistake that let a single rail inspector catch a seal number? The honest answer, and it's not a satisfying one, is that nobody made a mistake at all. The seal that Carl Whitfield flagged in March 2025 wasn't a smuggler's error. It was a legitimate maintenance replacement, done correctly, on a genuinely damaged seal. Except the replacement stock the network's supplier had shipped that month carried serial numbers from a batch that had already been assigned on paper to a different lot of boxcars entirely. A clerical collision on the supplier's end that the network itself never even knew had happened. The system that had run flawlessly for 2 years was finally undone by an accident nobody inside the operation caused. That is not the story true crime channels usually tell, and it's worth sitting with for a second. Sometimes the machine that gets caught isn't caught because it broke. It's caught because something completely unrelated to it, somewhere else in the supply chain, quietly went wrong at exactly the wrong moment. By July 2025, the task force, now formally designated Operation Split Seal inside the Bureau's case management system, had grown from Vasquez and 2 analysts into a 14-agent, multi-agency effort spanning the FBI, Homeland Security Investigations, the DEA's Houston Field Division, and the ATF, brought in once wiretaps confirmed the network's Kansas City distribution arm was also moving firearms north to south, feeding weapons back into cartel-controlled territory in exchange for product. Recovered inventory from a related stash house in Belton, Missouri, would later include 14 AR-15 rifles, several converted to fire fully automatic, along with thermal imaging scopes purchased through a straw buyer in Olathe, Kansas. The wiretap authorization that summer produced the case's most chilling piece of recorded evidence, a call between a mid-level Kansas City coordinator and someone agents believe was El Ingeniero himself, discussing a delayed shipment. "Nobody notices a boxcar," the voice said, according to the transcript later entered into evidence. "They notice a truck. They notice a person. A boxcar is furniture." It's a genuinely unsettling line to hear knowing what was inside that furniture, and it tells you more about how this network thought than almost anything else in the file. Put yourself in Vasquez's position for a second. 4 months into a case built on a seal number, a parking lot camera, and a metal shop 600 miles away in another country. You have a clerk, a welder, and a nickname. You do not have a face, a real name, or a location for the person actually running the operation. Every wiretap gets you closer and further away at the same time, because El Ingeniero never once uses a phone the task force can trace directly to him. He always speaks through intermediaries. What would you have done at that point with 14 agents, 4 agencies, and a boss asking for a timeline? Vasquez did what the file shows she did. She stopped chasing the man and started chasing the money. If Meridian Tile and Stone was a shell company laundering distribution proceeds, the cash had to land somewhere real eventually. It always does. Financial forensics on Meridian's accounts, run jointly with IRS criminal investigations starting in August 2025, traced roughly $210,000 a month moving through the company's books as wholesale tile receipts. Invoices for tile sales that, when agents cross-checked against Meridian's actual warehouse inventory and its real, much smaller legitimate tile business, simply didn't exist. Product that was never bought, sold to buyers that were never real, at margins no tile distributor in America actually runs. From Meridian, the money split 3 ways. Roughly 40% moved into a string of 6 residential and small commercial real estate purchases across the Kansas City metro area, bought under LLCs registered to a Kansas City attorney who would later be charged separately with money laundering conspiracy. Another chunk, smaller but steadier, funneled south again as wire transfers to 2 currency exchange houses in Nuevo Laredo, effectively completing the loop. Cartel product moves north disguised as tile, cartel cash moves south disguised as tile revenue, and the same 12 boxcars that carried the fentanyl north sometimes carried nothing at all on the return trip, except empty pallets and a clean manifest, because by then the money had already gone home electronically. The third piece, and the one that took longest to document, was a roughly 15% skim that appeared to go nowhere traceable at all. Cash withdrawals, structured just under federal reporting thresholds, at ATMs and bank branches across 4 states. Agents believe this was El Ingeniero's personal cut, paid in a form specifically designed to never touch a bank account long enough to be seized. If that's accurate, whoever he is walked away for 2 years, with an income stream that never once showed up as taxable, traceable, or attributable to a real name. Here's the take that'll probably get us some pushback in the comments. The yard clerk, Ruben Salcido, is going to serve significant federal time for a role that, dollar for dollar, was almost incidental to the operation. He made maybe $130,000 a year off this. The attorney who structured the real estate purchases, the currency exchange operators, quite possibly El Ingeniero himself, several of them are going to walk away with far less time, or in at least 2 cases identified so far, no charges at all, because their paper trail was cleaner and their cooperation came earlier. The system doesn't always punish the people who caused the most harm. Sometimes it punishes the people who were easiest to catch on camera in a taco shop parking lot. Would you have taken Salcido's deal if you were sitting where he was sitting, in a stable job, watching your daughter's tuition bill grow every semester, and someone offered you $11,000 a month to look away from a routing code? It's an easy no from the outside. It gets harder to answer than people want to admit once you're the one staring at the number. The technical failure that nearly stalled the entire case came in September 2025, 3 weeks before the planned takedown. A court-authorized wiretap on the Kansas City coordinator's phone, the same line that had produced the "boxcar is furniture" recording, went dark for 11 days after the target switched to a new encrypted messaging app the surveillance software hadn't been configured to intercept. 11 days is an eternity in an investigation moving toward a coordinated multi-site operation. Vasquez's team had to scramble a new Title III authorization for the updated communication method, racing a federal magistrate's calendar against a takedown date that couldn't move without risking the network noticing the sudden law enforcement interest and scattering. They got the new authorization on October 2nd, 9 days before the planned raid. It was close. Closer than anyone on the task force wanted to admit publicly afterward. There's a line in the eventual indictment that reads almost like something out of a novel rather than a federal filing. It describes the network's transfer yard rotation, in the government's own words, as a shell game conducted with 40-ton steel containers designed to exploit the routine invisibility of interstate freight. Somebody in the U.S. Attorney's Western District of Texas office wrote that sentence, and it stuck with me since I first read it because it's exactly right. The entire operation's genius, if you want to call it that, was making sure nothing about it ever looked like a story worth telling, until, eventually, it became one. On October 14, 2025, at 5:20 in the morning, coordinated teams moved simultaneously across 3 countries' worth of jurisdiction. In Laredo, Texas, agents took Ruben Salcido into custody at his home 4 blocks from the rail yard where he'd worked for over a decade. In Belton, Missouri, a joint FBI-ATF team hit the stash house connected to Meridian's real estate purchases, recovering the 14 AR-15 rifles, roughly 480 pounds of pressed fentanyl powder staged for further distribution, and just over $4,700,000 in bundled cash found inside a false-bottom gun safe. In Kansas City proper, agents executed a warrant on Meridian Tile and Stone's actual warehouse and arrested the company's registered manager, a 39-year-old logistics coordinator named Travis Kowalczyk, who, records would later show, had no idea for the first 8 months of his employment that the company he worked for existed to launder cartel proceeds, a detail his defense would lean on heavily, and one prosecutors would ultimately concede in part. Mexican federal authorities, moving on a parallel warrant, hit Fabricaciones Industriales Reina in Monterrey the same morning, taking Hector Duarte into custody and seizing the fabrication jigs, delivery logs, and 3 partially completed boxcar bulkhead assemblies still on the shop floor. physical proof of the exact engineering method that had beaten backscatter X-ray for 2 years, now sitting in an evidence locker instead of a border-crossing freight car. El Ingeniero was not among those arrested that morning. He is still, as of this account, formally unidentified in the public record, listed in court filings only by that nickname and by a description investigators built from wiretap patterns and courier testimony. Someone with formal engineering or fabrication training. Someone who had likely worked in or around rail logistics before turning that knowledge toward smuggling. Someone who never once, in 2 years of recorded communications, said anything that gave agents a name to attach a warrant to. That's the piece of this case we genuinely can't close for you, because the government hasn't closed it either. Whoever designed a boxcar compartment precise enough to fool X-ray density scanning for 24 months is, as far as the public record shows, still out there. If you've ever wondered how many other freight cars are running right now with a similar false wall 11 inches behind a legitimate-looking pallet load, you're asking the same question the task force is still asking. 40 tons of steel, 42 pallets of tile that were never really tile, 12 boxcars cycling for almost 2 years, and in the end it took 1 yard inspector, 11 digits, and about 15 minutes of paperwork to start pulling all of it apart. Would you have caught it? Most inspectors on most days wouldn't have. That's worth sitting with too. We cut a piece of Travis Kowalczyk's story for length. How a man with an MBA and no criminal history ended up running the front company's day-to-day warehouse operations without knowing what it actually did. If you want that part told properly, tell us in the comments and we'll go back into the file for it. By December 2025, a federal grand jury in the Western District of Texas returned indictments against 58 defendants spanning 4 states, Texas, Missouri, Kansas, and Illinois, where a secondary distribution arm had been quietly identified through the financial trail agents built off Meridian's accounts. Charges ranged from conspiracy to distribute controlled substances and money laundering conspiracy to firearms trafficking counts tied to the Belton stash house. Ruben Salcido pleaded guilty in April 2026 to conspiracy to import a controlled substance, and in a sentencing hearing this past June was ordered to serve 11 years in federal prison, a sentence his attorney argued was disproportionate given his role compared to others in the network, and one prosecutors argued was appropriate given that his corruption had been the single point of failure that let the entire operation function undetected for 2 years. Travis Kowalczyk pleaded to a lesser count, tied to failure to report suspicious financial activity, cooperated fully once charged, and received 18 months, most of it likely to be served in a minimum security facility. Hector Duarte's case remains pending in Mexican federal court as of this recording, complicated by extradition and jurisdictional questions between the 2 countries' legal systems. Prosecutors have said publicly that his cooperation, providing the fabrication jigs and delivery logs that connected Monterrey to Kansas City, will be a significant factor in whatever resolution his case eventually reaches. Union Pacific, for its part, issued a statement in November 2025 confirming it had cooperated fully with the investigation and had implemented additional serial number verification protocols across its interchange yards, cross-referencing seal batches against supplier shipment records in real time rather than relying on visual inspection alone, a direct response, though the company didn't put it this way publicly, to the exact clerical collision that had let the smugglers' seal replacement pass undetected for as long as it did. The $650 million figure attached to this case, the number that made it the largest rail-based fentanyl seizure tied to Sinaloa cartel logistics in the case's official summary, represents the estimated annualized street value of product moved through the 12 boxcar rotation over its full operating period, according to DEA valuation methodology cited in the case filings. The single seizure at the Belton stash house, 480 pounds, represents a fraction of that total. Investigators believe the full 2-year run moved considerably more than that single seizure alone, most of it already sold, already distributed, already impossible to recover, which is the quietly grim arithmetic underneath almost every case like this one. The raid you see on the news is never the whole story. It's whatever was left on the day the doors came down. Is that justice? 58 indictments and a clerk doing 11 years while the man who engineered the actual smuggling method walks around unidentified? We genuinely don't know how to answer that cleanly, and we don't think the agents who worked the case know either. What we can tell you is that it started with one man looking at a number that was almost right and deciding almost right wasn't good enough. Somewhere out there, another Carl Whitfield is looking at another seal today, deciding whether it's worth the 15 minutes. If this is the kind of case file you want more of, subscribe, because we go back into the declassified record every week for stories exactly like this one, the ones that don't start with gunfire, but end up somewhere just as dangerous. Let us know in the description which part of this case you'd want followed up first, the search for El Ingeniero or the Duarte extradition, and we'll consider it for a follow-up. Thanks for watching.